Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to MLSsoccer.com's Playoff Central presented by Samsung Galaxy. Greg Lawless alongside Simon Borg and Corey Gibbs, and we are here to take you up to kickoff for the Eastern Conference Championship first leg between the Houston Dynamo and Sporting KC. The game actually goes live at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can watch it on NBC. It's going to be a really good one. It's going to be a repeat of what we've seen the last 2 years at this stage in the playoffs. Guys, let's take a look first, though, at how we got to this point. Look at the bracket. Houston getting by Montreal and New York, and Sporting getting by New England, Simon.
And Houston and Sporting both had their work cut out for them in that second leg. Both teams going to extra time just on Wednesday. So I imagine we'll see some heavy legs in this game today.
Well, heavy legs, but they are shooting for a trophy, of course, at the end of this. Now, both of these clubs have won them before. KC won it in 2000 with that amazing run by Tony Meola. And then Houston, in their first 2 years in the Bayou City, they get 2 trophies in 06 and 07. Corey, are either of these guys going to get a third one for their case?
No, I don't really think that history means a lot right now. I think the Portland Timbers might be the new champions this year. I think they're in good form. I mean, on the road and at home. They're full of confidence, and I see this team winning it.
Well, history may not mean much in that case, going all the way back to 2000 or 06 or 07, but it definitely means something from this year. Now, Sporting Kansas City went to BBVA Compass, and they got a victory. Now, a lot of people would say this broke some sort of a curse. The one thing we do know is that it broke Houston's unbeaten streak at BBVA Compass across all matches, across all competitions. It was at 36 games. Amazing for them to actually break that. The rest of the games this year in 2013, a 1-1 draw and a 0-0 draw. So only 3 goals scored in 3 games. Simon, this is going to be a very low-scoring affair.
A low-scoring affair, but for Kansas City, I think those 3 games were very important because it established the fact that, look, they had a monkey on their back. Houston is their bogey team. But what it established is that Kansas City maybe is past that. This is a different kind of team with a different attitude. Years past, we saw Kansas City kind of bring their head down. That's not happening this year.
Well, of course, they also, in years past, met Houston at this point in the playoffs, and we see some of the highlights here from those games when they were playing. And Houston getting it done 2 years in a row. Now, Peter Vermees coming out afterward at the end of the second leg in 2012, and he had some things to say about the way Houston played. Right. And it was all about sort of the fouling and some of the, let's say, the Houston style, the philosophy that comes in. Here's what Peter Vermees said. Basically, either they won the ball or they fouled us. And we'll get to the end of that. At some point, the referees got to step in and change that by giving a card or doing something. Now, Corey, let me just mention something. Sporting Kansas City ended up leading the league in fouls this year. And in fact, in the 2 games that they played at BBVA Compass Stadium this year, a win and a draw, they outfouled Houston 45-21. So have Sporting changed something this year?
Greg, mind games. That's all it is. Vermees is coming out saying something, knowing that his team is the leading team in fouls. Listen, the Houston team, they're very tactically smart when they play defensively. They're hard and aggressive, but they do it in the right areas, and they do it at the right times. They don't really hack, but when it comes down to breaking up plays, stopping the counterattacks, they do the right things. I don't think there's anything against that. It's a little bit similar, I mean, at that way higher level, to Barcelona's new tactic of the way they play. They sit back, and what Tata Martino wants Barcelona doing is breaking up those big plays before they count.
Yeah, but they're right about the fact, Vermees is right with his comment last year. Today, Kevin Stott is the referee. He's one of the most experienced refs, an excellent ref. He's going to have to manage this game, and especially with the cards. A lot of players on warning.
Yeah, 4 big players and starters for Sporting Kansas City with yellow cards, including defender Aurelien Collin and Chance Myers. So definitely something to look out for right there. Now let's go down to Houston, where our Katie Witham has a report from the sideline about what's going on in the field down there. That has been a talking point.
Hey guys, well this one no doubt is going to be a physical, tightly contested match, but the one thing of note that we should definitely keep our eyes on throughout this match is how the size of this field here in BBVA Compass Stadium affects play, specifically for Sporting Kansas City's side. That's something that both Graham Zusi, Matt Beasler, and a couple of the players talked with me about yesterday. This is a Kansas City team that's very used to possessing the ball and taking advantage of the space on the field, in particular wide space. So they talked about how today may be a challenge early on to figure out how to use the shape of this field and whether or not they're going to pack it in and serve a lot of balls in from the flanks and take advantage of the air battle. So we'll definitely have to keep our eyes on that one. But in terms of weather, it is a perfect day here in Houston, Texas. It's actually probably considered cold for most of these fans in the stands. 71 degrees. It's an overcast day. It is absolutely perfect. Field-wise, this field has not been in better shape. It has not been played on for 6 days since the last game against New York here in Houston. So it really is a perfect matchup for these two clubs as we get set for this first leg of the Eastern Conference Championship. For now, though, guys, we'll send it back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Katie. So the field is looking much better, but Houston, they love that small field. It's part of what Houston does. It's part of the voodoo. We know Dominic Kinnear likes to have a small field, keep it tight and compact. It's part of noodle time, is the way I think about it. What is noodle time? Well, look, last year in the playoffs at Chicago, Will Bruin scores a goal and he goes over in the corner. And there's a sign, noodle time. You can see the sign right there. And basically what it is, by the way, that sign showed up on the Today Show on NBC a couple of days later during the playoffs. And it became a theme for them in the playoffs in 2012. They ended up going to the Cup. This is basically saying it's time for Houston playoff soccer.
It's a rallying cry.
It's a rallying cry.
Yeah, definitely. Noodle time is the same thing as game time, is the same thing as let's turn it up time. And I think it's the same type of philosophy that Bruce Arena has with the LA Galaxy. They have that philosophy of saying, let's use the regular season as our preparation. Let's get ready. But the main thing is to make the playoffs, and that's when we really push, because we know what we have to do to get there. And then it's all about being physical, doing the hard work, and then after that, playing our football.
Although you got to believe that the players wanted maybe something more ominous, something more regal even to define them in history. When we look back at this Dynamo team, noodle time?
Look, well, maybe it's the voodoo. We just saw actually there are some votive candles around Brian Ching. Remember Brian Ching, of course, toward the end of his career. Now let's go into, he will not be in the lineup for the Houston Dynamo, will he? And there will be some changes for the Houston Dynamo because Corey Ash is suspended for this one. So, Corey Gibbs, take us through the Houston lineup.
Yeah, we have a couple changes from that usual Dynamo team that we're used to seeing. Tally Hall in goal. In the center back positions, Bobby Boswell and Eric Bruner. On the right, Kofi Sarkodie and Mike Chabala filling in for the suspended Corey Ash. We're going to see how that one plays out. Warren Crevel, who's been exceptionally well in this whole playoff run, is going to sit centrally like always. Ricardo Clark in front of him. El Capitano, Brad Davis on the left, Boniek Garcia on the right, and up top, Will Bruin and Omar Cummings coming in for Giles Barnes.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a good change for the Dynamo. I mean, we're going to add a lot of speed and athleticism now with that lineup.
And Omar Cummings, of course, 2 goals already in these playoffs. 2 big, huge goals for them, in fact. Now, the way Cummings has been playing, you talk about him bringing in the speed. Really, entering these playoffs, people were talking about Giles Barnes being a massive part of the attack, but now it has been Cummings. Is it just the speed that he brings, or what else does Omar Cummings
No, Greg,
bring?
this is playoff time. It's all about who's in form, and I think Dominic Kinnear has that one in his bag. Omar's full of confidence right now. I had a chance to catch up with him before we've had this interview, and he said, listen, you know what? I'm ready for this match. I'm ready for the opportunity. I've been injured all season, but right now I feel like I'm in myself and I'm in my form. So that confidence means a lot, and Dominic Kinnear, it's translated from him throughout to Cummings getting that start. And I think it adds speed, it adds athleticism, it adds Will Bruin now having a different dynamic of being able to get balls out of the air, flick them on. But what that happens now is Kansas City's going to have to be aware of that. They're going to have to drop their line quite a bit, and then that's going to cause Will Bruin to now slip into that midfield and get a lot more possession of that ball than he's had in that New York playoff run.
That speed is also important, though, because they're not going to be pushing up necessarily on the left side as much in particular. The Houston Dynamo have had great success over the years with the overlapping defenders. They play a very simple sort of 4-4-2 kind of thing and get those wide guys going. Simon, Chabala, not Corey Ash when it comes to the overlap.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a more conservative game out of Mike Chabala, who is fast when given the space, but he's not as quick, not as athletic. He's not going to recover as well as Corey Ash defensively. So where we saw Corey Ash against the Red Bulls pushing forward in extra time as if the game just started, Mike Chabala is going to have to be a little more conservative with his energy and with spacing. Because remember, he's playing alongside Eric Bruner, who's only recently been a starter.
Simon, we're missing an all-star player. I mean, that says it all. I mean, we're losing a big compartment. Speed, athleticism, joining the attack. But, you know, what also The big thing that we're losing now is positioning. We know Koreash who can get forward, but he's good at coming back and covering those two center backs who are really not as fast and not as.
And you know what else he's very good at is he's good at getting into the heads of his opponents, and he's going to be going up against Graham Zusi, and if he would have. Getting into the head of a Graham Zusi is always something that can throw a team off in that case. Now, someone whose game has not been off at all, Tally Hall, the goalkeeper for Houston Dynamo, had a blinder in the second leg against the New York Red Bulls, and Katie Witham caught up with him down in Houston.
Set for this game against Sporting Kansas City, you guys, the Dynamo, have played a lot of soccer just in the last couple of weeks. Physically, how are you feeling, and does that make it maybe even more mentally important to be sharp today?
Yeah, it puts a whole new emphasis on being a good soccer team first, because we know we're a little bit banged up, we're a little bit tired. Luckily, they went through an overtime as well, and so it puts us closer to an even advantage or disadvantage. But so it's going to be the smarter soccer team, I think, that comes out of here with a positive result.
When you look at the games that you guys have played between these two clubs this season, they've been physical, they've been very tightly contested games. What do you expect going into this one today?
I think it's kind of going to be more of the same. I mean, they've been very physical. I mean, they've outfouled us in the last outings. I know we have a reputation for being kind of a thuggish team, but it's funny if you look at how many times we actually foul other teams. It's the numbers don't quite add up. So I think it's going to be a situation where they're going to want to break up our midfield play as they have done before, and hopefully we can pass out of pressure. We can avoid a situation where they are able to kind of slow us down and prevent us from getting any momentum.
Tally, appreciate the time. Good luck today.
All right, thank you.
A little thuggish is what he's saying. Now, here's a question for you. Do you think he has a tattoo right across it just says Thug Life, right? Tally Hall now has Thug Life tattooed across there. Now, he also talked about the fatigue. And let's take a look at these two teams over the last couple of weeks, 3 weeks basically. 6 matches played for Houston, and they've traveled almost 8,000 miles to play all those, versus what Sporting have done, only 4 matches played and only 5,000 miles. The travel is a big thing. Are they that fatigued here? Is this a problem for them?
I mean, simply, of course, they have to be. I mean, as a player, you're not. I played 12 years professionally, and on average, the most that you're looking to play is 2 games a week. We're looking at 7 games in 20-odd days. That's almost 3 games a week. It's going to be a lot, not only on their bodies, but the biggest thing is that mentally, it's draining. Knowing that you're coming into another match, it mentally brings you down. So we're going to have to see how strong and unified this team is. The only advantage that they do have is that it's at the end of the season. So that team camaraderie and the way that they're used to playing is there. Training sessions are a lot less, and it's really about just preparing your body for the big games.
And I would say because of that travel, Corey, I think Houston, despite the fact that they're at home, they play conservative. Yeah. Get what you can out of this game, but don't kill yourself, because now you have 2 weeks to prepare for that second leg.
That's the biggest thing being the lower seed. I think they're at an advantage of being the lower seed because they're playing their first leg at home. Mm-hmm. So their team should be fully prepared, a little bit more rested to get the suspended Corey Ash back for the second leg away from home in Kansas City.
Well, Corey, you were talking a little bit earlier when we were offset about how Houston prepare all year long for this. That Dominic Kinnear gives his guys as many days off as possible so that when you get to noodle time, you're ready to do the cooking and get the right spices in there. All right, now look, let's look at what's going to come at Houston, and that is the Sporting Kansas City roster. Simon, walk us through what's going on for these guys.
Well, they're sticking with the same back line and midfield as they did in the last game, so it's the usual Sinovic, Beasler, Cullen, and Myers along the back line. Then you have Nagamura, Rossell, Feilhaber. We'll see how Nagamura and Feilhaber hold up. They're not used to playing back-to-back games, especially given the extra time last just Wednesday. Then up top, here's where you have the change. It's Bunbury up top, Zusi on the right, but then Jacob Peterson back in here. We saw him use Peterson in that first leg against New England on the road, and I think he's hoping for Peterson's hard work and his enterprise to really challenge the Houston Dynamo and force them into defending.
Well, let's talk a little bit also about the forward choices here. Now, Teal Bunbury goes in up top. We saw him play against New England. He did okay. He's had, he has a chance. He obviously has that pace he can get behind. Dom Dwyer came in, though, in the second leg and had a good game. He brought a lot of that, what you were talking, Jacob Peterson type of energy, hounding the back line, maybe something that could work against Houston. And then Claudio Bieler coming on and getting what ultimately was the series-winning goal. Is this the right choice? Is Teal Bunbury, I almost said Alex Bunbury, his father, is Teal Bunbury the right choice for this one,
For
Corey?
me, I think it's the right choice. For me, Dom Dwyer is a player who's going to come off the bench and give his energy, give his speed, and cause havoc up top. And then the other choice, we look at Bieler. I know you like him a lot, Simon. I know you really like him.
Simon loves Bieler.
He loves him. He loves him. But for this type of game, especially against Houston, we're talking about a scrappy game. Who's going to put the pressure on those outside backs and those two center backs? Who's going to cause havoc? And I think Teal Bunbury is going to be that right choice right now.
I think if you're not starting Bieler and you're leaving him off the bench, which I don't agree with, I think you should have gone with Dwyer here, because I think he gives you the physicality that Bunbury has, but also he gives you that speed where you can go balls over the top. Because I think, again, this game is going to be played in a handkerchief. Both teams are going to just make sure space is reduced.
Well, one guy who could maybe open up that handkerchief a little bit, and I'm not even sure what to do with that analogy. It makes me think about blowing noses and stuff like that. Anyway, look, is Graham Zusi. Now, he has not had the greatest of games so far in the playoffs. He's not been that sort of dominating performance. Corey, what do Kansas City need to do to get him more involved?
I don't blame it on the team, and I don't blame it on Graham Zusi. He knows what type of
Who do
player.
you blame it on?
I blame it on, and I don't blame it on anybody. I give credit to the New England Revolution defense.
A politician is
A
born
million
right
percent.
at the moment.
And I'm saying it in twofold. Listen, if Graham Zusi wasn't having his best in his best form right now, I'll be the first to admit it. But we have to give credit to how New England's played against him. We're looking at a New England team who was defensively so athletic and so hard in the back. And Andrew Farrell on the right, and then Darius Barnes filling in on the left. We're talking about two very athletic, hard defenders. And centrally, listen, they're one of the strongest in the league, and they proved well. So I think now with the way that Houston has set up, and with Corey Ash being out, and Shabala filling in, I think that Graham Zusi now is going to be able to express himself and take advantage of that and get forward. And with those two center backs that Houston have, listen, big, slow, lumpy guys, I think he's going to really try and get at them.
Big, slow, lumpy guys. I don't even know how to respond to that. Well, there's a center back also for Sporting Kansas City who's not exactly big, slow, or lumping, but he is out there. He looks very good, as he normally does. It's always about being dressed right. Look, his socks are just perfect right there. And that is Aurélien Collin. He's scored 2 goals in consecutive games now in the playoffs. That is actually the 4th defender in MLS history to ever do that in the playoffs. And he also scored for Sporting Kansas City in that win in Houston.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that. It's almost like he's got Houston's number and he is rising to the occasion. But here's the news about Aurélien Collin. Just coming out today, a report in France Football that says he is maybe thinking about a move. Now, Corey, you've been in a locker room, you've been there for a big game. When news like this hits, what does it do to the locker room?
It's ridiculous. I mean, it's an unprofessional comment. It might cause a little stir up, a little havoc between the club. And listen, we know why he did it. He wants to show that there's a lot more interest in European clubs to take it and take advantage of that and see him play in this big matchup. But leave that to your agent. Let your agent do the speaking. You sit back. And it's just unprofessional in terms of saying and spotting out which MLS clubs.
Yeah,
Listen,
that was the most interesting part of the
and
comments.
and
that
that's
he
what-
mentioned LA and New York.
And that's what annoys me most. I know how this league works, and you want to have confidentiality within the league, and it might turn Bruce Arena, it might peck you off. And I just think it was a wrong decision that he made.
Well, at the same time, you know, he is an important part of this team. He did come out, by the way, and say that he was misquoted in this, which is always what players are always going to say when maybe they stir things up in the locker room. But one guy who will have to stir it up a little bit on the field is Aurélien Collin's center back partner, U.S. national team defender and center back Matt Besler, and Katie Witham caught up with him.
Well, Matt, we're just an hour or so away from this game, and as you get set for this one, you guys have had the Dynamo's number this year, but when you look back in terms of postseason, they've been the ones to knock you out the last 2 years. Is that at all in the back of your mind, and how do you approach this one?
To be honest, it's not. It's the previous games we've played this year and then in years past, they're all kind of out the window now. What we're focused on is what we have ahead of us, the 90 minutes right now and then the 90 minutes back in Kansas City.
So the 90 minutes that we've seen between these two clubs this season have been very tight, physically contested games. What do you expect out of this one today?
The same thing. Every time we play Houston, it's a battle. Two very respectable teams. We know each other inside and out. But again, we have to manage the game the right way for these 90 minutes, and we have to match their intensity.
All right, Matt, good luck today. Appreciate the time.
All right, thanks.
All right, well, we heard Matt Besler saying right there, we know each other inside and out, and he expects a battle. So now, let's have a little bit of a battle for predictions, guys, because we're down to the nitty-gritty here. We're only a couple of minutes away from kickoff, and of course, you can watch it on NBC. I'm sure there will be a pregame show. You can check all of that out as well. Now, guys, let's get some predictions. Corey, you're up first. What do you got?
Well, Dominic Kinnear for me is arguably the best postseason coach in MLS. But tonight it's not going to come down to just him and tactically what he wants his team to do. I think it comes down to the players. And 7 games in 21 days, I think it's just going to be a bit too much tonight. I think overall in the series, they'll be able to take it. But tonight, Houston, Kansas City won.
Ooh, Sporting Kansas City with a victory at BBVA Compass again. Simon, what about you?
I think nothing gets resolved in this game. It's 1-1 is how it ends, and I think you got to look at Kevin Stott, the referee, and his role in this, and with all those guys on warning, what repercussions this game has for that second leg, which is in 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, of course, remember, it is a two-leg series. This would sort of be the first half of that series. It is an aggregate score that would actually end up winning it, and Simon, I agree with you. I actually agree with you for the first time in weeks that I have agreed with you on anything. But I say no, we are recording. We're saying 1-1 for in this one as well. I actually think that Sporting Kansas City are in better form, and I'm with you. I think ultimately the fatigue plays a factor in this one, and I think that they cannot just keep going. The game is at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Houston and Sporting Kansas City in the Eastern Conference Championship first leg. It's on NBC. It's also on Univision Deportes. Up in Canada, you can catch it on MLS Live and RDS2. Simon, for the French, I know you enjoy watching it in French.
Yes, always.
Right? Always watch it in French if you can. You're heading up to Canada after this to watch it there, aren't you?
No.
No? You're going to stay here and watch it?
Stay here. We'll
Good.
read my France football. And
Perfect. Well, at least you'll be here for our post game, which is coming up after the final whistle. Estimated time would be about